Bom dia. Vamos começar, então, o segundo módulo do curso de formação. Quero desejar a todos aqui, estávamos com saudades de muitos, né? A gente não se encontra com todos. Maurício eu encontro toda semana, então já não tenho muita saudade do Maurício, né? Já aguento mais ver o Maurício. Mas muita gente a gente só encontra nesses momentos. Eu gostaria de, para a gente começar os nossos trabalhos, dizer que nós estamos vivendo uma semana especial, né? A RAPS, nessa semana, foi definitivamente tornada uma instituição pública, né? Não sei se vocês estão sabendo, mas nós tivemos um evento na segunda-feira, vocês todos foram convidados, vocês estão sabendo que vocês foram convidados, né? A participar com o encontro Diálogos Políticos com o governador Eduardo Campos, foi segunda-feira. Foi um excelente encontro. Nós tínhamos um público de quase 60 pessoas e nós fizemos uma apresentação da RAPS para esse grupo. Foi muito bem recebida. E nessa semana também tivemos a publicação da revista Exame. Não sei se vocês estão sabendo. A Exame fez uma matéria dessa semana, que saiu ontem, sobre a RAPS. Vocês vão receber. Não sei quantos de vocês já viram essa matéria. Não? Saiu uma matéria grande. Deixa eu mostrar para vocês aqui. Essa é uma foto grande com o Guilherme e alguns líderes RAPS. Nós vamos tirar uma cópia para vocês. Essa é a matéria dessa semana da revista Exame, que, obviamente, dá uma grande visibilidade, uma grande responsabilidade para a gente, né? E eu não preciso dizer a vocês que já começou o telefone a tocar em tudo quanto é lugar. Convite para Rondônia, Mato Grosso, Amazonas. E o mais importante é que nós estamos nos reunindo. Então, essa semana é uma semana importante, porque nós estamos voltando aqui desde maio. Depois de junho, né? Nós estamos nos encontrando a primeira vez. E eu gostaria de retomar, só para a gente relembrar, né, Antônio? Desde o começo do ano, nós começamos o ano com o processo de seleção, em janeiro. Nós não pensávamos nos projetos empreendedores e jovens RAPS. Nós concebemos esses projetos e desenvolvemos algumas diretrizes. Depois, evoluímos para, em março, a primeira apresentação, que é a integração de vocês, que foi o seminário de integração. Nós fizemos aquele encontro. Depois, conseguimos fazer em abril o encontro dos jovens. Nós integramos esse grupo, inicialmente de 52 jovens. Nós estamos trabalhando com eles. Posteriormente, nós fizemos o primeiro módulo aqui em maio, antes das manifestações, de todo esse processo. Já em julho, nós conseguimos fazer um belo trabalho de integração, contamos com a ajuda de alguns de vocês que estiveram presentes para nos ajudar. O grupo de empreendedores cívicos, nós tínhamos um grupo de 111 pessoas, mas a gente tinha que fazer um trabalho de aproximação, de integração. Foi muito interessante. No dia 27, nós passamos o sábado trabalhando alguns temas de mobilização, de advocacy, de participação, de controle social. Fizemos uma mesa e todos os grupos circularam e foi muito interessante, muito importante. Todos os empreendedores assinaram também o termo de compromisso. Então, esse grupo de 111 vai diminuir para um grupo de aproximadamente umas 60 pessoas, que é importante para nós. Também alinhar esses outros dois grupos aos mesmos critérios. A gente não tinha isso claro no começo do ano. Então, tanto os jovens quanto os empreendedores também têm que assumir o compromisso, estão todos assinando o termo de compromisso. E agora, essa semana, em agosto, nós vamos ter aqui temos a presença e vamos ter aqui uma oportunidade ímpar de discutir, de aprender com o professor Steve, que é o nosso convidado especial para esse encontro. Mas o professor Steve vai ficar conosco trabalhando aqui o tema das técnicas de campanhas eleitorais. Quero dizer a vocês que nós preparamos esse encontro da forma mais produtiva e eficiente possível. A RAPS já encomendou, e já está praticamente o primeiro livro, encomendamos 4 livros para a gente publicar sobre técnicas de campanha. O primeiro já está pronto. Nós só não conseguimos publicá-lo porque não deu tempo, chegou agora recentemente. É um texto sobre introdução a estratégias de campanhas eleitorais e outros temas de comunicação direta, de mobilização. Nós vamos publicar esses textos até o final do ano. A gente pretende ter esse material disponível para vocês. Mas este encontro foi montado em cima das aulas do professor Steve. Então, nós temos aí uma dinâmica de oficinas. As aulas teóricas serão rebatidas em oficinas. A Roberta vai fazer uma apresentação logo depois do café. Nós vamos ter a primeira oficina, ela vai fazer uma apresentação da metodologia. Nós fizemos uma escolha de usar uma personagem importante, que é a Carlota, que vocês já conheceram. E, obviamente, isso vai ficar para a parte da Roberta apresentar na parte da metodologia. O que é muito importante, que eu queria destacar, em nome do Guilherme, que não pôde vir, ele teve que ir para o exterior, uma viagem, pediu para cumprimentar todos vocês, é que o nosso tempo mudou. Nós pensávamos num projeto mais médio prazo, mas, infelizmente ou felizmente, as ruas nos colocaram um desafio. E o tempo chegou. Tem muita gente interessada no que a RAPS faz, no que a RAPS é, o que nós, como grupo, queremos. Nós temos um desafio político imenso à nossa frente. Nós vamos, nesses 2 dias e meio, conversar um pouco sobre isso. A gente precisa conversar um pouco sobre a RAPS. Antônio, por favor. Eu fiz na apresentação... passa o próximo slide, por favor. O próximo slide. Na apresentação para o Eduardo Campos fez, o governador, ele já conhecia o nosso projeto do ano passado, e agora ele foi muito enfático. Ele, como presidente do PSB, quer fazer uma parceria com a RAPS, né? E nós vamos fazer essa parceria com todos os partidos que assim o quiserem. Mas, na apresentação, nós destacamos para esse grupo de pessoas que se encontrava na segunda-feira algumas características institucionais, o posicionamento institucional da RAPS, né? E aí, ao falar sobre o apartidarismo, a diversidade regional, partidária, ética, projeto de país que nós queremos conjuntamente construir, ficou claro que as pessoas têm uma grande expectativa por esta inovação que nós estamos empreendendo aqui. E nós precisamos trabalhar muito entre nós para sabermos exatamente corresponder a essa expectativa. Tem muitas tarefas à nossa frente, para todos nós. Não só o desenvolvimento institucional interno, posicionamento político, construção desse projeto, dessa visão de país. Nós temos que realmente, coletivamente, construir essa inteligência desse projeto, e é um desafio para todos nós, para o conselho diretor, para a equipe nossa, para vocês que são membros ativos desse processo, para os jovens, os empreendedores. O ano que vem, nós vamos fazer um novo processo de seleção. A gente já está prevendo um grupo muito maior de pessoas interessadas. Nós tivemos 400 e poucas pessoas que se inscreveram, mas nós estamos pensando já talvez 10 vezes mais esse número. Então, nós temos que não só trabalhar aqui a parte teórica com o Steve, de técnicas de campanha, mas vamos ter que conversar um pouco sobre posicionamento político e nós mesmos, o que nós podemos fazer, cada um de vocês pode fazer para a gente ajudar esse projeto a ir para frente, no sentido de corresponder às expectativas que o país começa a olhar para nós agora, né? Então, isso a gente vai conversar ao longo dos intervalos e dos momentos, mas eu quero passar e convidar primeiro o professor Steve para vir aqui. Professor Steve, nosso amigo, nos ajudou a conceituar esse projeto. Já está falando que tem vários países que querem usar a metodologia da RAPS para desenvolver. Ele mesmo vai dizer sobre as experiências. Então, eu quero convidar o professor Steve para assumir aqui os trabalhos e nos brindar com o conhecimento que ele muito generosamente vem nos ajudando. Professor.
Well, thank you, Marcos, and all of you for coming out, and all of the staff in the organization of RAPS. It is I think, a groundbreaking entity. I teach these techniques around the world. I was joking to Roberta yesterday. I woke up and I couldn't remember where I was at, and I thought I've been this summer alone. I taught this in Bosnia, in Croatia, in Romania, Bangladesh, in Kenya. Is that close enough? Is that better? All right. And from here I go back to Boston. I start the semester at Harvard next week, but then I slip away and go to Indonesia for a few days to teach this. The point of that is many of the groups that are looking at changing the way we do business in the world. It's not a secret to anyone here and to most people in the world that our political institutions seem to be bogging down. They seem not to be working. And as a consequence, there is unrest in the world in such high levels that when you look at polling institutions that follow this and have followed this for generations now, certainly a couple generations in the case of the Zogby polling company, for instance, they've never seen this level of anxiety and unrest in the world. Part of what makes this so important then is, and I personally believe this, and I teach leadership programs at Harvard in political campaign management and communication techniques, is I have a belief that we have to train a new generation of political leaders. And if we have to do that through an outside group, a shadow group, I don't care what it is it an NGO? Is it a group like RAPS? Is it whatever it is? We need to push the political players to be more responsive, because it's not happening. And as a consequence, we're losing, I believe, a generation in the world, a generation of young people that we're not investing in, that we're not giving opportunity to. And as we all know, when you shortchange one generation, it has ripple effects for generations to come. So the concept that Marcos and others put together of let's create an entity that essentially is designed to say we want a better society, we want a better okay. If you can't hear, if this isn't working, you just yell at me, okay? And I'll try to put the mic closer. So the idea that there are groups like this, and we first sat down less than 2 years ago at a breakfast in Madrid. I teach at the IESE Business School in Madrid as well. And Marcos and Ricardo Young and Roberta were there, and they were talking about the concept of RAPS. What could we create an entity that effectively could drive policy and drive it in a variety of ways, including into a political arena? And it was fun for me to sit with them because they had anxiety. Can it work? And I kept looking at them and thinking it already is. I mean, you have the concept, you have the desire, you have the understanding of the need and the importance. So what I want to talk about in the next couple days is, first of all, kind of a veil of leadership. What's the difference between a politician and a leader? As simple as that sounds, most political leaders in the world have no idea. They have no understanding. I know in the United States alone, and I've been doing international consulting now for the last 4 years or so, I know many of politicians, dozens, scores of politicians in America and around the world, and most of them are good people. It's hard for me, though, to think of one of them that's a leader. That's a leader. One of them. And I don't say that with arrogance or I'm not trying to be a negative or pejorative to politicians. They don't think like leaders think. They tend to get into a rut. They tend to let the politics bring them along. And so the first thing that I want to talk about this morning is to try to put a distinction between the understanding of leadership versus the understanding of a politician, and it's a problem. Because politicians' main goal normally is what? Let's get elected. Does that necessarily serve the best interests of the public? Very often it does not. And so how do you traverse that line? How do you travel that road that says, I need to be a politician to get elected, but somehow, once I'm elected, I check that at the door, and now I become a leader for the people that I'm supposed to represent? Because we're talking about representative systems here. If we were talking about something else, a dictatorship, a fascist system, let's go home. They're going to do what they want, and we can't control it. But in a representative system, it's different. And we're not doing it in the world. We're not doing it well enough in America. We're not doing it in Europe. We're not doing it in South America. We're not doing it in Asia. We're not doing it in Africa. We're not doing it anywhere very well. So the hope is that if we can look at a room full of potential leaders, and I believe you are leaders. You have the capability, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't look at an organization like RAPS and say, I want to be a part of that. To me, that's the first threshold. You have to understand the need. You have to be willing to put yourself in the line. And you've already done that. And so what I hope to do is, once we establish this kind of delineation between leadership and politicians and traverse that line, then over the course of the next couple days, to give you an idea of a state-of-the-art political organization, how to build it, what to do with it, and communication skills for you personally. And you'll see as this unfolds that the personal communication tends to be huge, because the one variable when you poll individuals internationally, anywhere in the world, and you ask them the number one reason they don't get into public service, the number one reason is they're nervous. They're nervous about screwing up. They're nervous they're not a good communicator. They don't believe they can put themselves into the arena. And one of the things we're going to show you in the next couple days is that is the least thing you should fear. We'll show you how to be a communicator. It is not difficult. We now have enough empirical evidence, enough studies that say we know how to get people to communicate and deliver a message that connects with an audience. And once you have that, it liberates you. The walls come down, and once you can communicate and feel comfortable, you can literally now step into the arena. So we're going to show you that, and then we're going to show you some political techniques as well for this state of the art. But I want to start, and do we have the, yeah. Let me find the right one. Click on one. The problem is the problem is the first one. See the deciding one right there. No, come down. Come down. Down. Nope. Keep going. Keep going up. Keep going. You want to go back, see the Brazil. Keep going up. Okay, yeah, keep now down. Oh, that one right there. Yeah, see what that, yeah, click on that one. And now go to the first slide. The second one now, number 2. No, it's not that. Click out of that one. Okay, go to that one. Yep. Yes. And go to slide 2. Yeah, this is the one. Okay. All right. All right. Where I want to begin, where I begin these courses in lectures and these presentations in both at Harvard and when I do this internationally, we begin by literally, as simple as it sounds, if I asked you, what's leadership? Let me put it a different way. If I asked most elected officials that I know today, tell me your definition of leadership, this is what I would hear. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, I say that with some trepidation, with some sadness. You guys don't know? You were elected. Being a representative is the most daunting experience I can imagine. Let me get this right. There's a million people that say, Steve, I have to go to work today. I have to make a living. I'm just struggling to get by. Will you essentially go and represent me? Will you take my proxy and just don't screw me? Will you just do that? Most people today think they're getting screwed. You know why? Because most people probably are. In the political arena. The political arena isn't working. It's shutting down. I believe in part because politicians don't have a sense of what it means to be a representative, of what it means to be a leader. Let me define leadership in a very personal way. None of you know me, or I know some of you a bit, but most of you don't know me. My definition of leadership came from my mother. I was the youngest of 8 children. My father was sick when, in fact, was sick for about 2 years and was told that he and my mother should not have sex, that it could kill him. He had a very, very bad heart. Either the human impulse or the sexual impulse or something defied that doctor's order, and they had sex. And 9 months later, I came along. That's the good news for me. The bad news for me is 4 months after that, my father died. As the youngest of 8 children, my mother, this was 1958, my mother had to raise 8 children alone. She had a farm. My dad had a farm. And she tried to work the farm while she raised 8 children. The point of that little bit of history, it was a hard life. It was difficult to put food on the table, but she did. It was difficult to put clothing on her back, but she did. It was difficult to give us any kind of opportunity, but she did. And one of the most remarkable things that she ever told us kids, and she told us quite a bit, is how I would define leadership, and that is this. She said to us over and over, she would say, life is going to throw you some bad things, because it just does. She said, you've already witnessed one of the most difficult ones, the death of a family member, in this case, your father. But she said, you're going to face a lot of difficult things in life. It could be illness, could be bankruptcy, could be divorce, could be a sick child, could be a lot of things. And most of us are going to have those things happen. But she said, none of those are as bad as this one thing. One thing is worse than all of those. And we would look somewhat puzzled, thinking, wow, what's worse than death? I mean, Dad died. That's a pretty bad thing. And she was very serious, and when you hear it, I think you'll understand. She was a very Christian woman. She was a Catholic, very devout. But she said, this is the worst thing that could happen to you. On the last day that you breathe air on this earth, if you look back and say, I did not leave more to this earth than I took away. If you cannot say the world is a better place because you walked upon it, she said it will be the loneliest feeling you could ever have. Because as much as she believed in an afterlife, she said, we don't know. It's faith. We think there is, but we don't know. She said, this may be your only shot. You have a responsibility. All of you 8 children have been given gifts. One of them wasn't a father. But you take the gifts you have and you maximize them. You live to your greatest potential. Take risk. Do what's right. Make the world a better place. Think of that. She was right. If all we do, no matter what our skill set, is we just exist, we leave a carbon footprint that lasts well beyond us, that hurts our children. If all we do is make money and somehow better ourselves at the expense of others, What good was that life? That, to me, is the definition of leadership in public service. Think of it, if every politician that went to their chambers, went to their offices and said, today I have a responsibility to leave a better world, what am I going to do? Am I going to take the check from the big corporation and give them benefit at the expense of the masses? What am I going to do? If they just held to that simple principle, we wouldn't have problems in the political arena, but they don't. I'm asking you to. So why then politics for leadership? Why is politics such a powerful vehicle for exercising leadership? Can't I be a leader in business, in law, medicine? Of course I can. Do any of those have more power than government? Not even close. Not even close. Government dictates all that we do. It just does. Dictates how much money we have, dictates how much money we don't have, dictates whether we get an education, dictates whether we're healthy. Hell, government can take your life if they want. That's power, folks. And yet, where are the leaders? Where are the leaders? Well, if that's so much power in politics, why do people who possess leadership skills not get into it? Why are some of you, and I hope all of you, get into the political arena? Our goal in these training sessions is to say, if we can give you the skill set or show you that you, in fact, possess the skill set and you get into public service in the political arena, we'll have better competition, and because you understand leadership, we'll have better leaders. Simple premise. So why don't people get into it? There are many studies now worldwide that ask politicians, or potential politicians all over the world, why don't you get into politics? Why won't you run for office? These are the top 5 worldwide. The first one, people say, I'm not going to get into politics, it costs too much money. Either personal money, I don't have it, I can't campaign full-time because I got a job. I got to make a living, I got to pay the bills. Or they say, I can't raise the money, or I won't because all the money's tainted. I don't want to raise tainted money. I don't want to sell out. Fair enough. We're going to talk about how maybe we can overcome that. The second one, I don't know the issues. We all have egos. We fear that I'm going to stand up and somebody's going to say, well, Steve, what do you think about the transportation program here in Sao Paulo? And I'll go, and I don't know the details, and it scares me. I don't want to be embarrassed. Well, believe it or not, in the simple answer, we're going to come back to these, do you think every elected representative that you send to your governmental offices, do you think they're geniuses? Do you think they know these issues? Do you think they know them cold? They don't. We're going to show you how to be conversant in the issues, because that's all you have to be. We don't expect any more. Don't let that one disqualify you. The third one, I'm not a good public speaker. How many people in here think you're good speakers? How many people fear speaking? It scares most of us. It scares most of us. It shouldn't. We now have a bundle of evidence that says we can show you how to deliver a message and deliver it very effectively. And the words don't matter that much. We're going to go through that later this weekend. A fourth one, we all have made mistakes in our life. And we have skeletons in the closet. We say, I don't want to run because I don't want it ever exposed that I did drugs in college, that I had an affair, that I didn't pay my taxes. Believe it or not, we tested 269 of what we believed could be the worst things people could do. I mean, we didn't test murder because we figured if you were a murderer, the odds were at least probably pretty good that you wouldn't get elected. But so something like that. But basically, we tested everything. And we said, what if somebody had done this, had the affair, did the drugs, did whatever? Of the 269 that we tested, only one was disqualifying worldwide. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to what it is? Sex with a child. Anywhere in the world, people said, no, we won't forgive you for that one. Well, what about the extramarital affair? Oh, we can forgive you. It depends how you deal with it. What about doing drugs? I use the example, it's on here somewhere, but I'll give it to you now. I had an individual come to me one time, and he said, Steve, I want your advice. I'm thinking of running for office. I want to run for office. And I said, okay, well, so what are you thinking about? And so he told me. But he was very hesitant the whole time he was talking to me. And so I said, well, you came to me and you initiated this. You said you want to run, but you seem very hesitant. Like, you want to run, but you don't, or there's some problem. What's the problem? He said, well, I have issues. I said, okay, what are the issues? He said, well, I have AIDS, HIV. I said, okay. Could be a problem, maybe not, but I said, tell me more, what happened? He said, well, that's the problem. He said, I contracted AIDS because I ran with prostitutes. He said, oh, it's not done. I either got it from running with prostitutes or I got it because I did illegal drugs and shared needles. One way or another, that's how I contracted the AIDS virus. And I said, well, okay, how long ago? I mean, when did you stop doing this? He said, well, that's another problem. Just a couple months ago. And my instincts were, you are toast, buddy. You can't do this. You can't run for office. And so that initial instinct kicked in. It said, why are you even talking to me? And then somewhere inside of me, I had just asked him a simple question. I said, I'm sorry, don't take this wrong, but with everything you've just described, why do you want to run for public office? Why would you ever put yourself out there for public office? And he looked at me, stone cold, looked me in the eye and said, because I'm dying. And I said, excuse me? And he said, I'm dying. The doctor said I don't have long. I don't know how long. Could be a few months, could be a few years. But I'm not going to live a long life. He said, but I want to give something back. He said, I've seen young people in the streets doing what I'm doing. I don't want them to die. I want to be an example that says you can overcome. You can do the worst things to your life, to your body, and still overcome it. I want to be that example. And I looked at him and said, here's the deal. I'll help you under one condition. When you announced your candidacy, you have to tell that story. You have to announce and say, I'm running for office today for one simple reason, because I'm dying. And I think I can help people that would make the mistakes I made. He did that and he won. Skeletons in the closet aren't the problem, folks. It's how you deal with them. And we'll show you how to deal with them. 269 different things. Only one of them did the world community say is disqualifying. The rest of them, if you handle the response right to what that issue is, you can overcome it. Finally, people say, I don't know how to build an organization. I don't know how to run a campaign. I don't know how to build a campaign. I don't know who to hire. I don't know when to hire them. I don't know what their job responsibilities are. We're going to show you that this weekend, okay? So my goal here this weekend, in part, is to show that those 5 issues that most people, good people like you, might take yourself out of the political arena to say, don't do it for those 5 reasons. You may not do it, but don't do it for those. And the key to that is, if those are the 5 big ones that scare people, if you can demystify them and take them off the table, and so some of you will look and say, okay, I didn't think I could because I'm not the best speaker, but okay, I see how I can be now a better speaker. I thought I had some skeletons that bothered me. I think I can overcome those. I know now how to build an organization, whatever it is. We're going to show you how to do that. Again, money. How do I know you can raise enough money to win an election? How do I know that? Simple. somebody does it every cycle. I can't tell you how many politicians come to me and say, Steve, I can't run, I can't raise the money. I say, what do you mean you can't raise the money? And I'll say, who's in office right now? Well, Senator so-and-so. Senator so-and-so raised the money. Well, yeah. Okay, well, who's in this office? Well, Governor so-and-so raised the money. The money's out there in politics, folks. You just got to go get it. You got to figure out how to get it. You're going to run into some ethical issues. Do I want to take money from this group or that individual? But the money's out there. Don't use money as a cop-out. Again, don't know the issues? We'll show you how to be conversant. We'll show you in a policy discussion how we can get you conversant on the major issues in a campaign. In a simple premise, in any campaign anywhere in the world, there normally is 1 or 2 or 3 issues that are predominant. We're going to show you how to be conversant on 3, and we're going to hedge our bets and say we're going to pick the top 10 or 12 issues, and we're going to make you conversant in short order. We're going to show you how to do that. And it doesn't take long. It's easy. Good speaker, again, we're going to show you the techniques on how to connect. Skeletons, we talked about. We can show you how to overcome that. And building a professional organization, we know how to do that too. One of the great things, America does a lot of things very well. America does a lot of things very poorly. One of the things they do well, in part because they spend billions of dollars to figure it out, is how do you run a state-of-the-art campaign? How do you canvass voters? How do you talk to people? What persuasion techniques work? America spends billions of dollars every year. The good news about that is we know that this stuff works. And we're going to show you a bunch of those techniques this weekend. How do you connect with voters and move them to support you? It's not that difficult, but very often in a lot of places that don't spend the kind of money that the United States does, they don't know how to do it. And one of the things that's wonderful, in my classes at Harvard, I have 2 of the largest classes at the Kennedy School, about 150 students in the class, about half of them are international students. And the international students very often will come and say, well, we don't do something this way, or we don't in our country do this, or we don't do that. And invariably, and I'm consulting in about a dozen countries around the world, almost universally, the techniques we're going to show you this weekend work. We may have to massage them a little bit. We certainly have to adapt them to the culture. And I come to all my international clients and say, I don't come here thinking I know it all. I don't. I was in Bangladesh a couple weeks ago and said, I don't have a clue about Bangladeshi politics. But I'm going to hire somebody on the ground, and you're going to help me through the culture and the language, and I'm going to show you what techniques that you're probably not using that you could use, and they could be very effective. And we're doing that. We're doing it in Indonesia. We did it in Spain. We did it in France in the last presidential election. These things can work, okay? So we'll show you those things, and that's the goal. That's the idea, okay? If we can, at the end of this weekend, if you can walk out of here and say, you know, I wasn't entirely sure, something didn't click about this whole leadership idea, I do have a responsibility. I have been given gifts. I can do this. Oh, and the 5 reasons, the main reasons, there may be others, but those are the big ones, that people don't run, and some of those bothered me. They don't bother me anymore. I can do this. That's where we want you to be. Okay, so once we can get you past, and we will over the next 2 days, hopefully, these fears, these 5 fears about running, the most important first lesson in politics in a representative system is this one. Politics is not about you. It's not about those who would serve. It's about those who would be served. Think of that. How many of our elected officials live by that standard? Not very many of them. They think it's about them. Well, I got to get reelected. I need to raise some cash here. I need to, oh, you need something here, corporate entity X? Well, I can probably help you out with that. You need some legislation? I need campaign checks. That's the way it works. We know that, right? Sorry. You fail a test, folks. Politics isn't about you. Oh, I'll help you if you help me. Nope, no such luxury. In a representative system, I have the daunting responsibility to represent. Why is that so important? Why is that concept so fundamental? And most politicians today have no clue. They live in a bubble. Everybody pats them on the back when they walk into a room. People stand, oh, Senator, oh, Governor, oh, Member of Parliament, oh, Mr. President, oh, Mr. Prime Minister, oh, Madam Senator, whatever it is. And they live in this bubble and they decide, I must be doing everything right because everybody pats me in the back and they hand me a check. And meanwhile, their people are starving, the roads are crumbling, opportunities not being built, their kids aren't being educated, they're not being immunized. The seniors are struggling. That's the best you got, folks. That's the best we got in the world. That's the best you got in Brazil. In Brazil, you had almost 1 million people take to the streets recently. You know what I call that? Good. When you're upset, voice it, folks. Demand better of government. Demand that they serve you. Because they're not. In a representative system, that is their one duty. And they're not doing it. Things like RAPs are going to make them do it. They're going to put them on the spot. Here's the policy we need to move Brazil forward, and you're either going to adopt them, you're either going to employ them, or we're going to find other people that'll do it. I kind of like that, because the parties today aren't doing it, folks. It is about those who would be served. But in politics, and here's where the dilemma comes. In politics, before you can serve, I got to get elected. I got to get elected. Is running for office different than being an elected official? Yes, that's the problem. I got to get elected. And our system tends to say to get elected, you have to sell out. You have to do things you may not like. So how do you rectify those? How do I walk that line to say I'll do what it takes to get elected, but once I'm elected, kind of the distasteful things I might have had to do, I set them at the door and now I'm a leader. We're going to talk about that. It is the number one ethical concern. I've had students say, and people in conferences like this say, Steve, I can't do anything that would violate my own personal ethics, my own personal conscience. And I say, genuinely, I respect that. But then I pose a question, and I'll say, but let me just ask you this. What if you have the values to change the world? You do. If I get elected, I am going to be a legitimate representative. I'm going to fight for the people. I'm going to represent all my constituents. But I have some ethical concerns about how to get there. And so I would say to you, so fine, take yourself out of the political arena. Your opponent, and you know this, doesn't have those ethical concerns. So when you take yourself out and you concede to that opponent that is now going to do the things that you detest about government, about politics, now what are your ethics? It's a dilemma. I don't want government to keep doing the things they're doing. I don't want the government in America, in the United States of America, 1 out of 6 people are on food stamps. 20% of Americans go to bed hungry. And the U.S. Congress just voted to suspend the Farm Bill because they didn't want to add money to food programs. And I said, well, let me get this right. So more people in America are hungry today than any time in our history, and your solution, Congress, is to cut programs that give people food. How's that for representation? Right, but thank you, that's the way it works. And so, if I I can't somehow wade through these murky waters to get elected, if that means I'm conceding to somebody that isn't going to affect change, that thinks service is about them, wow, I don't feel good about that one either. You're going to wrestle with that. You're going to wrestle with that. Okay. We know, and we talked about it, the goals of politicians are immediate. They want to get reelected. The goals of leaders are generational. What kind of world do I want to leave for the people of Brazil, for the next generation, for my kids, my grandkids? That's what leaders do. That's what leaders do. Let me get at this. Can anyone, run in a representative democracy? Can anyone in Brazil run for office? I mean, once you reach a certain age, and those, I understand that, but no?
Different the system in Colombia. Vou falar em português. Diferente do sistema na Colômbia. In Colombia, where you don't need a party to run for office, in Brazil you have to be in a party to run for office, and the barriers of entry are so big here, like economically, in terms of violence to homeless candidates as well, that people don't want to get in a party and then get there to run for office.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought everybody in a representative system could run for office. Apparently they can't. In the United States, I ask people all the time, can anyone run for office in America? Most people say, oh, yeah, it's just America. We can run for office. I said, no, you can't. No, you can't. Similar deal. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? We talk about disenfranchised voters, impediments to voting, putting roadblocks to keep people from voting. In America, in 2010, 24 states passed laws to make it harder to vote. You know why? They made it harder for blacks, made it harder for young people, made it harder for senior citizens. And they did it because they didn't want a black man to get reelected president. The 24 states that did that had Republican governors. Barack Obama's a Democrat. I tell people all the time, representative system is an imperfect vessel. Right? In America, we've had it for 237 years. And 2 years ago, 24 states said, we want to pass laws to keep a black man from getting reelected. America rejected that. Good for America. But they tried. It's imperfect. It's going to be hard. But to the point, we do disenfranchise voters. I would argue we disenfranchise candidates more. It's harder to be a candidate. Some of them are the reasons you outline in Brazil. In America, it tends to be monetary. I can't afford to run. How am I going to pay the mortgage, a car payment, put food on the table? In America, you tend to run for office if you have money. Somehow that's a bad system. That system's skewed. We're going to talk about social media over the next couple days and why that, I believe, is the pivotal development in world political history that is fundamentally changing the way elections will be run for the better. It is allowing potentially millions of more people to get into the arena. And we're going to talk about that later in the week. Okay. Remember too, and this is something, the reason I put this on here, in party systems, strong party systems like Brazil and other places around the world, elections, and I hear this all the time, people will say, well, in Brazil our elections, election law says we can only run for 90 days or 6 months or whatever it is. I'm doing a race in Bangladesh, and they said, well, when the election's called, we have 90 days. We can't do anything ahead of 90 days. And I say, really? You can't do any politicking ahead of 90 days? Well, what do you mean politicking? I said, could you canvass voters? Well, yeah, we can talk to voters. Well, why aren't you doing it? Can you do survey research? Could you take polls? Could you do focus? Well, yeah, we could do that. Well, why aren't you doing it? Could you do research on issues, self and opposition? We're going to talk about those things this week. Could you do that? Well, we could do that. So why aren't you doing it? A simple lesson for those of you that want to get into politics or thinking that you might, don't let time become your enemy. Most elections are won in the off year. The more work I do in the year out, or let's say it's a 1-year election cycle, the work that I do the first 6 months will determine how well I do the last 6 months. If I just wait to that 90 days, if I just wait till the end, I'm not going to be a very good candidate. You do politics to win. I've been fortunate, most of the races I've done in America and around the world, we've won. And I don't say that with arrogance, they're tough. I'm getting too old, because it really is, it just seems to get harder and harder. But I don't want to let time slip away. I tell people all the time, in politics, they don't give ribbons for second place. You either win or you're out. I don't want to be out. You work too hard, the cause is too great, the belief is too important. I can't lose. I had a student from Columbia come to me. It was an attractive young man. He was in the early 30s, educated at the best schools. He was at Harvard, And he came and he said, I want to talk to you. I want to go home and run for office. And I said, well, okay. And again, I said, but you seem hesitant. And he said, well, I'm in exile now. I said, what do you mean exile? He said, well, I've made it known that I was going to run, and I was back a few months ago, and there was an assassination attempt on my life. I said, okay. I said, wow, is it worth it? He said, well, that wasn't the first time. He said, I was back a few weeks ago, and he said, I have a driver, and I normally sit in the front, and he would sit in the back, my bodyguard, and he said, we decided to rotate because, just for security reasons, the next day after we had rotated, and I was now sitting in the back where he normally sat, and he was sitting in the seat I normally sit in, there was another assassination attempt, and he was killed. And I said, are you telling me that you still want to run after all of that? I said, is it worth dying for? He said, I'm not going to die. And I said, you don't know that. I said, my God, twice. Once, if you wouldn't have rotated weirdly 24 hours earlier, you'd be dead. He said, I won't die because I can't die. The cause is too big. My country's in too much trouble. Dictators and ruthless leaders have stolen too much from our people. So I need to get elected. This was someone that was running for office in exile, thousands of miles away. He didn't wait till the election. He was building an organization, even with those odds. So the difference between a political leader and a politician, if all you want, and the beauty of rooms like this is, I know that's what you don't want or you wouldn't be here. But if all you want is money and title and ego, isn't that the definition of politics today? Isn't that what we have? If that's all you want, go home. Go home. We have that. Political systems worldwide are chock full of people that just want money and power and ego. We need leaders who can change the world and be an example for the world. If I asked you, name a leader in any walk of life, law, business, medicine, who would you name? In Brazil. What leaders are there in Brazil? Anybody? Alive?
I mean, alive is pretty hard, but Chico Mendes, Sérgio Vieira de Mello, Marina Silva. Marina Silva is alive.
Okay, and by the way, yes, alive. Okay, I do this sometimes when people will say Gandhi. I say, okay, good. Martin Luther King. Okay, good. Anybody know a leader who happens to be alive? Could you give me that? Anybody else? Named a couple political leaders. Anybody else? Mandela. Nelson Mandela. Okay. Anybody else? It's hard. It's hard. Think of that. My God, what an indictment on humanity. A room full of highly intelligent people. And by the way, your answer is right. People ask me all the time, they'll say, well, Steve, you talk about leadership all the time. Tell me a leader in America. And I'll go, okay. And I'll do the same thing. I'll say, a live leader or a dead one? Because dead, I can help you. I can go to Lincoln. I can go to King. I can go to Franklin Roosevelt. A live one. Who? Jay Leno? Jay Leno didn't come to mind, the comedian, but maybe. But think of that. And then the next question I get today is, you don't think Barack Obama's a leader? He's a disappointment. Well, here's my response on Obama. I think Obama has great leadership skills, but I think the verdict's still out. And I use some examples. Obama, I believe global warming is one of the greatest tragedies in human history. Tragedy not because it's happening, but because we're ignoring it. because we're acting like it isn't happening, and we're creating it. And Barack Obama apparently believed in the science of global warming, but didn't go to Rio, to the last conference. Hasn't done a whole lot in the environmental arena. When General Motors and Chrysler went bankrupt, he handed him a check and said, here's a check, go build cars. It saved 278,000 jobs in America, actually a lot more than that. Those were the immediate jobs in the factories at the auto plants. But what I wanted him to do was to say, here, General Motors, here's $5 billion. Oh, one catch. You're never going to produce another fossil fuel vehicle. You're going to retool your factories, and I don't care what cars you build. I don't care if they're hydrogen. I don't care if they're run on garbage. I don't care if they're run on hot air. Let the politicians blow into the tank. But you're not going to produce fossil fuel cars. And if GM said, we can't do that, Mr. President, I'd have said, I'm sorry to hear that you went bankrupt. I'm going to give this check to somebody else. Somebody will take this $5 billion and they're going to build cars that don't run on fossil fuel. Chrysler, same deal for you. You either retool, I believe global warming's destroying the world. If I believe that, then by God, I've got a responsibility as a leader to do something about it. He had a moment and he let it pass. Leaders don't do that. Now, having said that, as one of the last industrialized nations on earth that doesn't have universal health care, Obama tried on health care. It goes into effect on January 1 of 2014. We'll see how good that is. I give him credit for that. That was not easy. I also give him credit because he's up against a Congress, a Republican House that wants to destroy anything and everything he does. I understand how difficult it is. I'm not making excuses, but I understand. So leadership, think of that though. I believe leadership is a mindset. I believe the next great leader in the world is sitting in this room. Do you believe that? Why not if you don't? Why can't the next great leader of the world be sitting here? America doesn't have a monopoly on it, God knows. When's the last great American leader? Europe doesn't have a monopoly on it. Europe's a mess. Asia doesn't have a monopoly. South America, the rest of North America, Africa. Why can't that leader be sitting here? The answer is that leader could be sitting here. It's up to you. This idea, what do? We get one life, folks. You are here because you believe in a cause. You are here because you believe the system is failing you. So why not go to the next level? Why not say, I'll put it in the line? Somebody's got to do it. Why not you? Why not Brazil? Why not? I believe the world is sitting waiting for a leader. They want an example. They want somebody who gets it right. The Pew Institute polls worldwide, every nation. The world inequity scale is at an all-time low everywhere. That is, people everywhere in the world say inequality is greater today than it's ever been in their lifetime. Wow. Where's the leadership? Who's going to stand up and say, I am going to take the reins in Brazil and I'm going to create a better society for our children and their children, and we're going to move this nation forward and we're going to show the world how to do it. And by the way, when you do it, you will be lauded, you'll win a Nobel Prize, you will be the shining example for the world. Don't think I'm kidding here. I'm not. You tell me, where are they? If it's not here, where are the leaders? How come they're not rising to the fore? I think it's because they don't have the right perspective. I think it's because they don't know how to get elected. I think it's because they don't know how to communicate. I think it's because they don't understand the power and responsibility of being a leader. And when you cross that threshold, You are liberated, folks. You can go do it. I like to tell audiences, for lack of a better metaphor, coming back to this idea, I've got to get elected before I can lead. Because candidates have no power. Candidates don't affect change. Elected officials do. The problem is there's a candidate island and there's an elected official island. And I have to swim from that candidate island to this island. The problem is it's not pristine water. It's a sewage lagoon. It's distasteful, it's ugly. It makes me do things I don't want to do, but somehow I got to get to that island to govern. That's tough, folks. I get that. I get that you're going to walk up to ethical guidelines, ethical concerns. But just keep in mind the end goal. The mission is I cannot serve, I cannot affect change if I'm not elected. But if I'm elected, there's nothing I can't do. Government is too powerful. I literally can dictate the future of a nation and a world. It's not too big a thought. How do I win then on this candidate island? Too often, particularly in systems where parties are strong, where parties are the most powerful, we let the parties dictate what our issues are. Well, my party stands for X, and so I'm for that. And I said, no, you're doing it wrong. The base of your party, the strong party identifiers, they're going to be with you for those reasons. You're with whatever party, you stand for the same ideals I do, I'll vote for you. Most people, though, worldwide, do not affiliate with parties, not psychologically. They may have to mechanically, I have to register, I have to be part of a party, but most people are not as close to parties as we are. They want to look at other things. They want representatives to understand their needs, their fears, their insecurities, their interests, their culture. They want to know what you can do to better their lives. And I'm here to tell you, when you figure that one out, you're going to win elections. Because every study out there, every study without exception, says when you address people's fears and insecurities and they believe that you have their best interests, you got their vote. You got their vote. That's why knowing these fears and insecurities, it is the number one. Think of it. I'm sitting around the table at night. I have a sick child. I don't have health care. I'm sitting there. I'm not worrying about what's going on. Is there rioting in the streets? Is there what's going on with gay rights? What's going on the abortion issue? What's my politician think about this? I'm sitting there saying, how do I take care of my kid? And the politician that looks me in the eye and says, I'll take care of your kid. You need insurance, don't have it. You don't have the wherewithal to take care of your kid. You're watching your kid suffer. You don't think that you think something else trumps that for anybody? It doesn't. Politicians that address fears and insecurities win elections. You figure out what the fears and insecurities of your constituents, not what your party thinks necessarily, but how to communicate to your constituents that you're supposed to represent. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, I also mentioned up here culture. Why is culture so important to people? We think, by the way, politicians think, if I show people I'm really smart on policy, I'll get elected. Well, here's the position on health care, here's my position on transportation, here's my position on taxes, and the public goes, politician, politician, politician. People identify with culture. If you tap into their culture, you've crossed a threshold for them. Oh, I'm a big soccer fan. Steve's a big soccer fan. Same team I like, must be a pretty good guy. That's all you know about him? Yes. That's enough. I made a judgment call based on his or her connection to culture. Certain type of music. I like a certain type of music. Politician likes it. Okay? You got me. Culture's huge. It's where people live. It's where they feel comfortable. If they think you're a part of that culture, they're going to like you. They're going to like you. Politicians tend not to engage in culture. I don't know why. I don't understand it. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I want to come back to this. If you're going to reach all voters and at their most powerful emotional level, you want to break, I believe, voters into subsets. We tend not to do that. You look at voters and say, well, what are the party members? That's my subset. I said, no, take the party out of it for a minute. Let's start breaking voters into subsets of voters and see how we can message and how we can capture their vote. Break them down by age, by gender, by socioeconomic status. What's their income level, right? Income levels, people are going to live differently, obviously. I want to know that. What's their race, religion, ideology, geography, where do they live? Some parts of Brazil, obviously the issues are going to be very different than other parts of Brazil. Again, what's their culture? I want to know those things. Then I want you to break them into needs-based groups. This is the most powerful in politics. All the research says... Yeah.
Are you talking Portuguese? Hoje você tem pesquisas para medir justamente quais são esses anseios do eleitor. Isso você não corre o risco e não cria uma realidade em que todo mundo acaba falando os mesmos temas, sobre os mesmos anseios, independente deles acreditarem nisso ou não?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me answer it with a question. Are politicians doing that today? Are politicians actually talking? Are they coming to people saying, how many people I was in Sao Paulo, so I'll stay with that. How many people in Sao Paulo need preschool, after-school care for your children? How many people need housing? I don't see politicians doing that in Brazil or anywhere in the world. It's a great question if they did it. Now, we're going to talk about, a lot of times politicians do talk about the same things. I mean, right? How many times do you heard a politician stand up and say, "Oh, how many people in here are poor? Okay, you poor people, to hell with you, I don't care about you." Right? Yeah, Mitt Romney. But that was accidental. He got caught on tape at a private reception. But no, you don't hear it. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to fight for the poor. Oh, I'm going to fight for better education. Oh, I'm going to fight." It tends to be generic. When you get into the weeds, what we do, and I encourage you to take your jurisdiction, wherever you're thinking of running, and literally try to get as much demographic information on the people that live there as you can. I want to know age, gender, educational level, socioeconomic indicators. But I also I want to know education levels. I want to know, do we have childcare? Do we have health care? What about parks and recreation? What about violence? Are there gangs? Are there drugs? When I can figure that out and I can say, in my district, there's 700,012 people that don't have proper housing, I can talk to them. I can stand and say, there are 700,012 of you out there who don't have housing. You know who you are. More importantly, I want you to know, I know who you are. It is abominable, it is unacceptable, and I will fight it. When I get to office, I will sponsor legislation that will make sure that we don't have 700,012 people that are living in the streets. I find it unacceptable, and I'll fight for you. If I'm one of those 700,000 people, I'm going to sit there and say, when did a politician ever even know that I existed? Much less said they cared and they would address my problem. Think of the power of that. And you break this into all these different categories. What is the issue that bothers people the most? We're going to show you how to canvass voters to help determine how to get at these people and determine what issues are most important to them. Once I find that, now I can reach them at the issue that matters most, issues of fear and insecurity. Every poll out there, anywhere in the world says that is the number one emotion that moves voters. Do I feel insecure? Do I fear something? And do I think a political party or a politician is going to address that fear? If I believe that, I'm voting for them and they got me. Too often, we don't even identify their fears. We talk in generalities, we wonder why people are turned off. They hear every politician, to your point. Oh, Steve says he's going to give me better education. So does this guy in this party. So does this guy. Who do I believe? The easy answer is they believe nobody, right? So talk to them where they live. Talk to them, and we call it the kitchen table strategy. If I can identify what people sit around the kitchen table at night and talk about, what their fears are, and I can address those fears, I got them. They're going to vote for me. Again, I don't have to go through all these individually, but There literally can be, the point is, hundreds of these. For one person, it might be healthcare. For another, it might be senior citizen medicine. For another, it might be childcare, might be education, might be crime, might be the environment. You find those issues and you address them, and you got that voter. Again, there are literally hundreds of potential ways to create these subsets of audiences so that you can message their needs. After the break, we're going to talk about how you message, how you develop this message to talk to these groups. But you want these subsets. Too often, particularly in systems, by the way, in America, we have a different system than Brazil, but we don't do this very well either. But in party systems, in systems where parties are very strong, they tend not to do it. Oh, I'm a member of this party, whatever the party says, that's what I stand for. No, get in, find out who these folks are, talk to them. And get them to nod their heads and say, okay, this is my guy. Because he or she is addressing the needs that affect me most. Okay. Fear and emotion, insecurity, they're huge. Successful politicians make voters believe, I feel your pain. Remember when Bill Clinton in the United States stood up and said in a speech, he said, I feel your pain, America. And the Republican opponents laughed at him. Oh, look at Clinton. I feel your pain. Did America laugh? No. America went, I think he does. I think he does. I'm in pain. I'm poor. He grew up poor. I think he does feel my pain. I think he was being honest. These Republicans that laughed at it, they don't feel my pain. They don't care about my pain. Bill Clinton got it. Bill Clinton understood. He could look at an audience and say, I know exactly what's your problem. I know when someone's unemployed. He said in a debate with George H.W. Bush, I probably know their name, he said. You don't think you say you're struggling economically. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know people that have lost their jobs. I looked at them. I saw the tears in their eyes. I was governor and I looked at them and I said, by God, I'm going to do something about it. And America said, I believe you. You got my vote. That's what I'm talking about. If you remember in that same debate, George H.W. Bush looked at his watch. Oh, we're talking about economics. I want to get out of here. Right? That's what we're talking about. Emotion in politics is huge. Tap into it, and you can get voters. I want to come back to culture briefly. Culture is important because it defines character. We think in politics the most important thing to voters are issues. Most important thing, actually, is character. If I can come off as believable, credible, trustworthy, voters are going to vote for me. And think of it. These are folks that are out working hard all day. They come home, they take care of the kids. They're not paying attention to all the issues that we think they are. So as a politician, when I stand up and say, well, here's my 10-point plan on this or that, their eyes glaze over. But if I can pull a Bill Clinton and look him in the eye and say, I am there fighting for you, and they see that emotion, they see that character. He seemed real there. He seemed concerned. That's huge. Again, every empirical study suggests it. Policy and campaigns matters very little to voters. Okay? Character matters a lot. And why is that? Voters don't necessarily understand issues, but we all think we understand character. Oh, that's Steve Jarding. He's such a phony. I know, geez, look at him. He rambles, blah, blah, blah. He never seems like he cares. He's not serious. We all make judgment calls like that. We go to a party, we go to a reception, and there's 8 of us talking, and 2 of them walk away, and the other 6 go, oh, geez, look at that. That guy was standoffish, he was arrogant, right? We make judgment calls. We make character calls. Or they say, wow, that guy, whoa, that was pretty cool. He was dynamic. She was wonderful. She was terrific. It's a judgment call based on character. Okay? You cross that threshold, you convince people on character, and that's half the battle. When Barack Obama stood up and said, I'm going to give you change that you can believe in, America, America believed it because he seemed like he believed it. Now, he got to the presidency, and it was a little harder to the point you made. Verdict maybe is out on Obama. But I think when he ran, he said, I'm going to deliver change. America needs change. And when America saw that passion and that emotion and saw the facial gestures, they believed it because it was genuine. That's what we're talking about. Give you some examples about some that went wrong, some that went right. John Kerry, U.S. Senator from Massachusetts in the United States, wanted to show rural America, where they hunt a lot, that he could connect to them. So he went goose hunting in Ohio. He went goose hunting and all the press followed him. This was in the presidential campaign in 2004. So tons of media, right? Hundreds of members of the media. He goes hunting in an LL Bean. Anybody familiar? They have LL Bean in Brazil. It's a clothing company in America that sells really expensive clothing. Most hunters in America don't wear LL Bean hunting outfits. So Kerry, trying to show he's a man of the people, wears a $500 LL Bean shirt and pant that's camouflaged. And when hunters saw it, they laughed at it. Oh, John Kerry's a hunter. What's that, LL Bean? LL Bean? What the hell's that? We don't wear LL Bean. What is that? What's that? Yeah. No, it's like, I mean, these are good old boys or whatever, right? These are hunters. They don't wear $500 hunting outfits. And it got worse. John Kerry goes hunting into the field, and he comes out of the field, and the reporters are yelling at him, Senator, Senator, Senator. Yeah, did you get anything? Yeah, I got a goose. Oh, where is it? Oh, well, this guy back here has it. Little problem with that. In America, if you kill a game, you have to carry the game or it's illegal. So John Kerry didn't know the law. He violated the law by not carrying his goose, and he came off as an idiot. Okay? It's, yeah, so the point is you want to attach yourself to culture, but make sure that it's legitimate. I'll give you a different example. Mariana Rajoy. I did some work for Mariana Rajoy, and I'm upset with Rajoy because the austerity program, I thought that was a bad program, but anyway, that's a whole other issue. But I knew some of his folks and asked me to help, and I helped him. One of his problems is that Mariana Rajoy is dull. He's boring. And they said to me, well, how do we make a boring guy more interesting? And I said, you don't. He's boring. You got what you got, folks. You try to make that guy interesting, it's going to come off as the biggest con job, and everybody in Spain is going to see it. And they said, well, but how do we at least make him, I don't know, look different? And I said, you know what? Put him in blue jeans. It won't make him any more flashy, but maybe it'll make him more down to earth. Because I don't know if you know, Mariana Rajoy would wear $2,000 suits, and he always looked pristine. He's got his beard, and he kind of has a higher voice, and he comes off as a technocrat, elitist, boring guy. So to just make him a little more human. And so he started going to events, and he gave speeches where he'd wear blue jeans, and people would say, I kind of like it. They tested it. We test everything. And they said, yeah, okay, he's not flashy, but he seems real. As good as we could get, okay? Another one, a guy by the name of Mark Warner, I actually ran his campaign for governor of Virginia. He was he founded Nextel, the cell phone company. He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he was an elitist. He owns a vineyard. He drives fancy cars. In Virginia, it's a southern state. Okay, there's a lot of, not just poor people, but kind of culturally, hunters, military is big. Elitists don't do well in Virginia. So Mark Warner, NASCAR, is NASCAR big? Did you have NASCAR in Brazil? Okay. For whatever reason, yeah, you just make left turns. I don't get it, but no, I actually go, and it's kind of fun to go to these. But I hadn't. Mark Warner is this elitist, but Virginia loves NASCAR. So I said, well, why don't you sponsor a NASCAR and tap into the culture? Said, okay. Bluegrass music is big in Virginia. Said, why don't we get a bluegrass band and have them come around to rallies with you and play bluegrass music, because Virginians like bluegrass music. He said, okay. I said, why don't we establish a sportsman committee for hunters? So hunters supporting Mark Warner. Mark Warner did not go to NASCAR races, did not listen to bluegrass music, did not hunt. The danger would have been had he said, I do hunt, I do listen. So the Republican opponents said to him, he's a phony. He doesn't go to NASCAR, he doesn't hunt, and he doesn't listen to bluegrass. And he said, I don't. I don't hunt. I don't listen to bluegrass. I've been to a NASCAR race, he said, but I can't tell you much about NASCAR. But he said, here's the deal. Virginians love it. I want to represent all Virginians. Why would I act like your culture isn't important just because I don't do it? So Virginians that support NASCAR, you got a friend in Mark Warner. I may not go, but you do, and I respect it. Virginians that hunt, I don't hunt. But I respect that's part of your culture. A lot of you have done it for generations. God love you for doing it. I love you for doing it. Bluegrass, right? I don't listen to it. A whole bunch of you do. Good for you. Think of that. Virginia applauded. Mark Warner ran in rural Virginia where the Democrats normally lost on average by 15 percentage points. 15 percentage points in rural Virginia, he won. That's where the NASCAR people live, the bluegrass people live, and the hunters live. He won by embracing their culture, didn't do it disingenuously, didn't do a John Kerry. Oh, I'm going to show you I can hunt by wearing a $500 outfit and then violating hunting laws. His response is, I don't hunt, but you do. It's good enough for me. Think of the power of that. Okay, finally, we're about done here. The elected official island. Candidate island, we'll talk more about how you run elections, how you message in the next section to get those voters, to get from that island, to get to the elected official. But this one again changes the world. Governments are the most powerful entity ever devised by mankind. Tell me a better one. Tell me a different one.
You should say that at the business school.
To business school? Yeah, well, there are people that think it. Tell it to the high-tech community. Oh, well, the computers are what changed the world. No, governments dictated. When Kennedy said, I'll put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, he said it in 1961, he walked off the stage. Staffers pulled him aside and said, excuse me, Mr. President, we don't know how to put a man on the moon. Kennedy, as the story goes, grinned at him and said, I know. And then he paused and said, with a grin, but we will. The space program developed the computer program, right? Government did that. The Bill Gates of the world and all the Steve Jobs, they can take credit for whatever they want, but if government didn't invest in the space program, we'd have been 3 generations behind those guys. Government does that. Governments lead your life. They spend your money. They tell you how healthy you should be, how safe you are, how many opportunities you have. That's power, folks. You want to get to that island. When you get there, you've got a responsibility. You've got a responsibility to lead, to do what is right. You're going to have to remember the responsibility of representation. It is so daunting. I guarantee you the elected officials in Brazil are not doing it today, not to the level they should. You must. You must. You have one shot to change Brazil. I believe that shot is upon us. I believe the perfect storm is upon us. The people are angry as they should be. You have leaders out there in the wings waiting. You have organization that is building and moving ideas such as RAPS. You have a perfect storm to say we can change Brazil and be a leader for the world. It's a moment. I guarantee you, if you don't take advantage of it and you walk away, you're going to look back one day and say, that might have been my chance. That might have been my chance, indeed, to change the earth, change Brazil, so that I can look back on the day that I die and say, my country is a better place because I walked upon it. My country is a better place because I took the opportunity and said, I will stand up and fight. And because of that, Brazil will be a leader for the world. It should be, it can be, and if you take this seriously and you take it to heart, there's no reason you can't do it. Thank you for this. We'll take a break, I think, and then come back for messaging. Thank you.